For an operator, it just means that they have to filter through so much more crap.
There's just this constant pendulum swing between bundling together products and unbundling.
I have long believed that your POS is going to be in your pocket. Stay close to the problem. Don't try and be everything to everyone. Understand what it is that you do and you do well.
On today's episode of the Restaurant AI podcast, I am joined by the restaurant technology guy himself, Mr. Jeremy Julian. Jeremy's the CRO of CBS North Star and founded the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. With over 300 episodes and decades in the POS space, Jeremy has had a front row seat into the evolution of restaurant technology. In our conversation, we dig into what the POS really is, why open systems beat walled gardens, and where AI fits into the future of restaurant operations. But before we dive in, a special thanks to our sponsor, ClearCOGS, because the path to greater profits is always clearer when you know what's ahead. With that, I'd like to give you my conversation with Jeremy Julian. We've got the man, the myth, the legend himself, the restaurant technology guy, Jeremy Julian, here today. Thanks for coming on, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It's fun to be on this side of the mic. It's always weird because I'm oftentimes the question asker, not the question answerer.
I'm sure you've got a lot of pent up things that you want to get off your chest.
Excited about our conversation, quite honestly, because it's been fun to watch your growth on the tech space over the last few years. So excited to hear what we get into today.
It's been a wild ride, and it's we didn't even really know we were a machine learning company before this whole AI thing came out, and then just happened to fall into a time that AI became the thing that everyone was talking about. It's like, I guess it's basically what we're doing as a company. It's been an interesting time to be in the space.
Absolutely. And I want to say that your first podcast that you ever jumped on was mine.
It was. Absolutely.
I got this random outreach from some guy that was a Jimmy John's guy that was starting something to solve some problems. And I remember our very first conversation was a lot of fun to understand what you guys were building.
I got to tell you, you represent the industry so well in that way that a new company that nobody knows, has no idea if they're legit, we're going to give you the time of day. We're going to give you a platform. If you're trying to help the industry, let's have a conversation about it. And like that hospitality, it's something that I've certainly tried to carry forward as well.
You absolutely have been great at it, and your energy is infectious, Mr. Wampler.
I hopefully I'm not infecting too many people.
A different kind of infection, but your energy is off the charts, and I love it.
All right, so I am curious, having spent, you guys are what, 400 episodes in, you've gotten to watch these companies develop, and you've gotten to be part of the conversation as it's evolved. What is the conversation today in restaurant technology?
It really comes back to scratching an itch that is out there. At the end of the day, and again, part of why I love about your guys' stuff is you're solving a real problem. You're not trying to write technology for technology's sake. You're trying to solve something that you know is a challenge. And so my favorite episodes from a technology perspective are those people that are like, hey, I was stuck and I couldn't get my check at a bar and I missed a concert, and so I figured out a way to go build a technology. I was tired of throwing away too much bread at the end of the night because I made too many loaves of bread for sandwiches and having that problem. Those are my favorites. I see a problem and then I go start to research to figure out what it is to solve it. I was talking to a founder recently about the challenge of labor management within a store and really bringing people in that they don't see restaurants as a career in certain areas, pandemic or otherwise, doesn't matter. And so they're struggling because their turnover is over 100%. So how do I make it simpler for the cooks to understand what to cook and how to cook it to ensure that food quality is there in a way that truly changes how we've always traditionally done it? And so those are my favorite episodes of those people that are trying to solve a problem that is not just trying to get rich and trying to, build a software company and then sell it for multiples of revenue.
Well, let me ask this. So it feels like the problems in restaurants haven't changed. I need to take orders. I need to do inventory. I need to staff people. The solutions do change and evolve, but the problems remain pretty consistent. But today, it seems like it's becoming more and more complicated. When you were first starting out and interviewing all these companies, there weren't that many and there wasn't that much innovation. Has there been this explosion in capabilities and new technology and complication that has happened in the last few years? Or am I
Oh,
imagining it?
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the barriers to entry have gone down. You no longer have to have this big server farm that you have to go invest tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Amazon has commoditized, and Google and Microsoft to come alongside of them to be able to allow you to get a server up and running in an hour. Whereas that used to be, 10 years ago, that used to be days or if not weeks with really, really highly leveraged people. The ability to even prototype software and solve that problem to say, hey, go create me a deck that is going to be able to solve this problem. I'm having this challenge, articulate it well enough. Say, what would be the biggest challenge there, the biggest solve for that? I think those things have allowed people to innovate. The other piece that I would say so yes, and I think restaurants are understanding that they have to adopt these methodologies or they're going to get left behind in certain areas.
Well, part of it, I can't decide if it's a good thing or a bad thing. So you lower the barriers to entry, and now you have a lot more technology companies coming in. The problem with that is it used to be you had to be a very well experienced person from the industry that had built this software before, raised money to do it, and you did a good job. Now you get a bunch of random companies that are like, why don't we try and do this into the restaurant industry as well? And it's more noise and not necessarily good software. So is the net benefit like we're innovating more as an industry and that's good? And the downside is the fact that it's an even more noisy, complicated market. Overall, is it a positive or a negative that those barriers have been lowered?
Um, I think for the operators, it's probably a negative. I think for the tech providers, it's probably a positive.
How so?
And let me tease out this conversation. So for an operator, it just means that they have to filter through so much more crap. And so they get much more reluctant to take things on. The burn that used to be able to, you used to be able to solve problems for people and people would adopt it and then they would come around. The operators were able to filter through those things. They weren't stuck at, having to go listen to different podcasts and blogs. And I mean, again, even just the advent of podcasts, I'm on one now, but when I started the podcast 5 years ago, there was like two restaurant podcasts, maybe three. Now there's dozens, and I'm grateful for it because it also has, from the service provider's perspective, me as a podcast host and me as a technology founder, I look at it and go, you know what, we have to be better. Those, again, Toast going out and raising a whole bunch of money, they have leveled things up. It
Yeah.
used to be that NCR and Aloha just sat on their laurels because they had everybody and they didn't really care. So the operators suffered because they weren't getting taken care of. And so to me, it's leveled up the service providers because they have to differentiate. They have to make something better. They can't just be like, it's not my problem that you don't want, that this problem is not solved. At the end of the day, we as technology service providers have to level up our offering, or users are going to have way more choices.
There's this great article somebody sent me maybe last month, and it's just stuck in my head. And that is the thesis of the article was that in every industry, there's just this constant pendulum swing between bundling together products and unbundling products, right? And if you get the swing right, you tend to do really well. And if you get the swing wrong, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So whether that is, streaming, it all gets bundled into like satellite and direct TV, and then it starts to unbundle into a bunch of streaming services that are now beginning to bundle again.
Mhm.
We are from the restaurant industry, the conversation usually sounds like the all-in-one or best in class.
Yep.
Are we today moving more towards more bundling, or are we still breaking apart and unbundling?
I think it depends on who you are as a customer. I know that the smaller operators or the operators that are looking to just scale and um, not necessarily looking to have a huge investment are at a place where they are looking to have one throat to choke. Unfortunately, it might be more expensive because now they've got leverage over you as a technology provider so that they can raise rates and you got to change everything versus, so it's riskier to put all in one, but it's simpler. So you might be willing to pay the price, but the risk is that they have your back office, they have your reporting, they have your credit card processing, they have your point of sale, they have your labor management. You
Well, I
don't
think
have the ability to choose, and if they don't service you, you get stuck in a circumstance where you just have to put up with it.
and I think you make a good distinction there. The independent restaurant owner is a very different market than the chain. So let's just break them into two. Is the independent restaurant owner, are they in a bundling stage? Everything's getting more bundled
Yes.
together?
Yes.
How
Toast,
about
Square, and the like have done a really good job of making it simple. They've gone out and acquired quite a few of the players that fulfill the markets that they started by being best in class, and then they went and bought up the places that they saw the largest traction. For years, I mean, again, everybody knows Toast where they are now. I remember them when they were just a mobile payment solution based in Boston. They weren't even a point of sale altogether. They were just doing mobile payments, when they got founded, and they were a best in class trying to attach to some of the legacy providers, and then they decided, hey, I need to do this. But I've had multiple people that they'd even acquired on the podcast in the past, and so I think the smaller operators are, as a
well,
cost of sale and as a cost for your overall technology deployment, it is a larger percentage of your revenue in those areas oftentimes, because you have a lot less leverage and you're bundling it together, but it's also simpler in theory.
well, and I find the independent operators to be the most interesting because they're almost like laboratory experiments. They can try things. They actually are getting technology sooner than the big brands that have these massive contracts. So, does that mean that when you look at like chains, that they are just behind the independent restaurant and that ultimately they're going to look more like the independent restaurant over the next 5 years? Or is it just a completely different market that doesn't follow independence?
I think it's a completely different market, and I think chain restaurants have their own value propositions and their own theories and their own ethos of who they are. I remember, I mean, Panera, everybody probably remembers Panera when they had no technology. They decided they wanted to be technology first. They wanted to hit, and it helped them. They're trying to reinvent themselves now in 2025, 2026. But they were at one point the first person that put kiosks and all of that in at large scale. Shake Shack. I was just in a Shake Shack when I was traveling over the end of the summer. They've now got kiosks everywhere. Shake Shack was this very personable type of brand, but they realized that this is what consumers were looking for. So I think some people innovate. Domino's has always been. I saw somebody, their chief innovation officer, speak on stage at one of the conferences this past year, and his whole theory is they're a technology company that just happens to sell pizza. Then we've got other brands like Mastro's that don't want technology to be seen anywhere because that's not the experience that you're looking for when you go to a Mastro's. And so I think it comes back down to what is it that you're trying to fulfill? And I believe people choose restaurants based on what they're trying to do. My wife and I are going away next weekend for her birthday. I am going to a 5-course wine and plated dinner. Do I expect technology to play a huge part in my meal? Absolutely not, because it's going to be a chef-driven, winery-based experience that's very different. You just traveled earlier this year to Asia, right? And the technology there, because their adoption for it is even greater than that of it here. We just rolled out a chain, or we just put a store in of a chain that's based in Japan. They got 400 or 500 stores in Japan. And they're like, why are the Americans not adopting certain things like this? Some of it also comes back down to culture, regardless of where you're at. And going to a coastal city, New York, Boston, LA, Miami, and throwing technology and kiosks out there versus going to Des Moines, Iowa. And I always pick on Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines, Iowa is going to adopt it slower than New York City is. I was sitting with the technologist recently, and they're like, we're not even going to have a card reader with an EMV chip on. I said, well, where are you doing your case studies? He's like, well, every restaurant I go into in New York City just accepts Apple Pay. So why would we even put this on here? And I'm like, well, because not every restaurant is like it is in New York City, man. It's very different. And so I know that was a very long answer to your question, but I think chains solve the problems in different ways. They have a lot more leverage to shave a point off or a point off here or there at a macro scale. But I think it comes back down to the brand ethos and who do they want to be when they grow up, and that will inform what decisions they make related to technology and how much investment they make in it.
So I can't think of a person that would have a better view on this than you, having spent so many years in the POS world. I'm interested in what the business of a point of sale system is, because it feels like forever it was a hardware solution. And then it slowly became a payment processing solution. Walk me through your journey and what you've seen over the decades as the business of POS has evolved.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we consider ourselves as a POS provider, the ERP for the restaurant. It's the source of truth. It's the source of transactional truth. It's the source
System
of
of
payment.
record.
It's a system of record that helps you understand what is going on within your brand. Whether those interfaces to get items into that are built by the POS or they're built by a third party, a labor management solution, a third party delivery solution, a online ordering solution, a kiosk solution, the point of sale is the ERP. It is the source of truth as to what did you sell and what were the items that were going into there. It has all of the business rules around how you operate as well, from taxation to routing to timing to all of those kind of things.
Why do we have a back of house system if you're the system of record? Because I would think that would be my system of record.
Because you need the transactions, and restaurants are a manufacturing plant. Like any other manufacturing plant, they're just not making Toyotas or Ford cars. They're making food, and unfortunately, it's perishable manufacturing, so the food is going to go spoil. But the system of record, as far as my analytics and my data, is pulling from the source system. Without point of sale, you take point of sale out of it, the back office has nothing, nothing at all. Restaurant 365 doesn't exist if it doesn't have the transaction system at the front of the house. I'm picking Restaurant 365 because they're one of the largest out there, but any of the back office systems don't have a business if they don't have the transactional data of who rang up what were the payments, what were the items that were rang up, how many of them did they have, all of those kind of things.
You generate the data, but the data
Yes,
really has historically been interacted with on a back of
on a
house.
back office, on the back of the house to be able to decide how many how many turkey sandwiches am I going to sell, and how much turkey do I need to buy from my supplier. All of that stuff that you do, and as a former operator, the transaction of how many turkey subs did I sell had to come from the point of sale. How many smalls did I sell that had 3 ounces of turkey on versus how many larges did I sell that had 5 ounces of turkey on them? You need to be able to get that transactional data. How much did I sell it for? How much taxes did I collect? Where did it get sent? All of those kind of things.
I've never asked this question, but I'm genuinely curious. I have to imagine like 20 years ago, there was a heated debate on whether the POS should also be the accounting system for the back of house. Was that a debate? What did that debate look like?
It actually was something that we built software 20 years ago to do exactly what you're saying. Is we were taking well before the internet was so prolific, and we've chosen to now just partner with people. But 20 years ago, we wanted one source of truth that went all the way through to the back of the house and all the way through to the P&L. We would have the challenges as operators. And again, I'm sure you, being a former operator yourself, you were at odds with what your franchise fees might have been with corporate. What you had in the store was different than what corporate had for those things, because there was two sources of truth. There was the ERP and there was the in-store system. And so you'd have a regional manager that'd be like, dude, I'm hitting bonus this quarter. I'm good. My labor numbers are right. My sales numbers are right. And then the P&L would show something different. And so we built a one-to-one all the way from the store all the way through to the P&L, so I could get a P&L within 15 minutes of the transaction closing, with aggregation and all of that kind of stuff. We built that solution because of this exact same challenge that
What
you're bringing up.
what happened with it?
It stopped all of the infighting with operations and finance and franchises and all of that kind of stuff, because there was one source of truth. You would make an adjustment entry and you would see it in both places, so that everybody was working from one source of truth. North Star, the name North Star came from our North Star. It's one source of truth that you capture data once and you exploit it often. was our tagline when we built the North Star solution that was on top of our legacy point of sale system that ultimately turned into the point of sale system that we're selling today.
And just to be clear, does that mean that you guys were also taking in like invoice data from the
Yep.
Ciscos of the world and my produce vendor, and I'm giving you an actual and a theoretical food cost and all of that?
Yep. And we
So
would do percentage rent, and we would have percentage rent that would go in. We'd accrue your labor. You'd pay, once every 2 weeks, but we'd have a labor accruals that would hit every day. And then they true up at the end of the period when I did all of my time clock adjustments. So I'd accrue labor daily, post an entry, and then I'd do an adjustment entry at the end of the period. So I could literally get a P&L out of Great Plains, is how old it was. Literally every single morning I could wake up with a theoretical P&L that was using last night's data within the stores.
so there are, I'm sure, dozens of operators that are rolling around in their graves right now saying, I've been saying this for 20 years. Why doesn't this exist? That's what I've always wanted. You were doing it 20 years ago. Something clearly went wrong that the industry doesn't have it. So there must be a case for why they didn't do that, why that didn't become the standard for POSs.
Um, why did that not become the standard? Because they're different skill sets. To make transactions easier and faster in the front of the house is very different than looking at P&Ls and looking at ERPs and looking at accruals. They're very different people. And so unfortunately, operations, training are the people that run the restaurants in the stores, and they want something completely different. We at one point, Matt, had four one customer did four different net sales calculations. Four different from
Gross,
different groups. They would
royalty.
gross up. They would take, yeah, exactly. Do I take coupons out? Do I marketing drops a coupon that's from corporate? Am I taking that out of my sales, or am I keeping that in my sales? Well, the finance guys don't really care, because what's getting delivered to the bank is very different than than the way I'm operating my business. And so, as crazy as that sounds, four different net sales calculations within the same customer. So why is it not the same? Because looking at the data and what I'm going to do with the data is different depending upon who I am and where I sit in the ecosystem, unfortunately.
I still can't believe that it didn't take off and become the standard. I mean, I get that,
It's one of
but
the
all
hardest
of
things to
those
unsell on customers that have it. It really is. We have some customers that are still using that system that we built 20 years ago. And it again, so much acquisition, so many of the changes, but there were people doing it 20 years ago. And I still think there are people that are trying to get there now. The challenge that I have is that money was so inexpensive to raise for so long that I think people went and acquired a whole bunch of software products without truly investing in them, and they grew through acquisition, not through innovation.
Yeah, I missed that wave. I would have really liked to have been
It
around
would have
and
been nice to have it
yeah.
have money be cheap. It's not quite as cheap at the time that you had you had to go out to the market.
No, and it brings up an interesting point, right? And that is the best technology and the best companies at actually solving a problem don't seem to always win in this industry. It's bizarre to me, but this overpromise, underdeliver, you would think would eventually fail, but it seems to be continuing and perpetuating in some ways. Why is that?
Because as humans, we're herd mentality. And I think we look to our left and look to our right, and somebody says, "Oh yeah, it's working fine for me," and they just choose it, and they don't want to disappoint people that they care about. And so I think all too often people will settle for less because it's easier than truly fighting the hard fight to go solve the challenge. Um, and I think it's a hard dichotomy to overcome. I'm sure you read The Chasm, but if you haven't read the book, Crossing the Chasm, it's really figuring out how to get from where you've got the early adopters to kind of that majority. You got to get there. You got to figure out how to get there, but it takes a few innovative people that are pushing through. You know, McDonald's
I don't
tried
I'm
how
not
many
even
times to do kiosks?
I think it's easy to hate on the early stage startups that are trying to fake it till they make it. I'm talking about the giant players that say, we are doing A, B, and C features when in reality they're not and they don't work. And they just continue that playbook of, you know, trying to do things that they don't really do and say they do.
Yeah. No, that is a
Because it
huge
puts a company
challenge for
like
restaurant
yours,
operators.
it puts a company like yours that really is not gonna overpromise. We're gonna underpromise, overdeliver.
Yep.
And now the bar, somehow they're like, "Well, they probably don't even do that," right? Like,
Mhm.
it pollutes the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. And it's a huge challenge for us because there's a lot of people that have invested lots of time and money and energy um, to get a solution implemented only to find out. I'm in the middle of an RFP today, literally today, where the service provider that they chose made promises that the product did something 3 years ago. And I'm now dealing with the sins of that other company lying to them that they still don't do it 3 years later because they're like, no, I want you to show it to me. I want you to show it to me in the store. I want you to show it to me in the store with our data, with our
Yeah.
customers. And they're like, no, 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 you didn't show it to me 4 different ways. You only showed it to me 3 different ways. And so it makes it a lot harder for all of us that are trying to do it the right way in the space.
You know,
Part of why, though, Matt, we've got an ebook coming out this week. This is the first week in December, 2025.
we're gonna have to
We
add
have an e
author to your mini titles.
we have an ebook coming out. We removed my name because I don't need the credit. And I say my name. I had a lot of help, lots of people around the organization, but it's really how to run a successful RFP for technology in 2026 and beyond. Because I think all too often, and it's a 10-page doc. It's not a huge thing, but it solves that problem so that you can truly solve and have them show me what it is that you're looking for and solve the right problem rather than getting and most people, this, buy with emotion. They don't necessarily buy with logic. They justify with logic, but they buy with emotion. And so that's part of the other challenge is they're buying with emotion and then justifying with logic rather than truly understanding what their problem is and then solving the problem that they have with true solutions that are out there.
Well, and not to mention the fact that a lot of the hard things are boring, they're not sexy. Nobody wants to deal with inventory or
Yep.
automating payroll. Like, these are things you just don't wanna deal with. You're That's probably an incredible book that is really relevant to me that I should read, and all I can think is, "Man, I don't wanna read a book on RFP processes in 2026."
Well, hopefully an asset that the industry because it's only I think I don't know 10 or 15 pages, but it
No, I
walks you through the thought process. Because to your point, you're going to go when you go buy a new car, I'm sure you look at it and go, "Do I need it? I've got 2 kids. I need something that's safe for them. I need something that gets good gas mileage. I need something that my wife is gonna be able to enjoy going into the pickup line at school," or whatever it is. You go through a thought process before you go pick up a car for your wife, right?
Yeah, well, I just bought my wife a baseball glove for Christmas. Hopefully, she doesn't listen to this before. And it
Oh, your wife actually listens to your podcast? My
I don't
kids
know.
and wife have not listened to all 300 of my shows.
I'm bringing it up because I feel very safe in the fact that she doesn't wanna hear my voice any more than she already does. But it's funny. I think I probably put more time into researching the baseball glove because I liked the idea of the baseball glove and how I'm gonna condition it and, like, than I did with hiring my tax accountant. Tax account was way more important, but it's a
Yep.
boring thing that I don't wanna do, and I think when it comes to buying technology, a lot of the work is on the things you really don't want to think about that you don't like, whereas your loyalty program, you're like, it's sexy. Let's go look at what we're doing there. What kind of dashboard do I get?
Yeah. Well, but at the end of the day, if the dashboard does nothing for you because your guests can't enroll in the program or they can't get the offers in the mobile way that they need it, none of it matters. The dashboard is going to be useless if it's not ultimately solving the business challenge that you've identified up front that's what you're looking for, which is the biggest process that I see with restaurant people is they want the sexy, they hear that it solved this problem for somebody else. 10 years ago, we had an order at the table, pay at the table solution that we had done for somebody. And the CEO saw it in the news and said, I want what they have. And it's like their brand couldn't even sustain what it was that they did. And I went in and I said, you can't you can afford this, but it's not going to make any difference in your business until you fix this, this, and this. It's going to kill your kitchen. It's going to be a different problem that you're solving, and that's really where, again, this ebook comes in. Is you got to truly dig in deep and understand what it is that you're trying to solve for before you go out and try to buy something or pilot something or waste anybody's time, because it's not easy to by technology in today's day and age.
Okay, so going back to the noise that we see and all these new companies coming out, and you getting a first look at a lot of these companies and who survives and who doesn't. One of the questions that constantly comes up is, do X operators tend to make better technology, not make better technology, or it's, irrelevant to the conversation?
I think if they're the right operator, they make better technology. And by that, I would say there are certain operators that are willing to invest in themselves to grow. You and I talked early on when you
Oh, I'm
founded.
I'm sorry. I don't mean on the restaurant side. I mean like tech companies. You see the Josh from Me's, he's ex-operator, Brandon from Byte, and then there's, other companies out there where they're a true tech company that has no experience in the industry.
Well, and where I was going with that, Matt, is those that are willing to continue to grow themselves. And I was going back to one of our very first conversations. Running a restaurant is very different than running a tech company. If you are willing to understand that mindset shift and do the investment, I actually think X operators make better technologists than technology companies do, because I think they value something different than what technology companies value.
And what
So
is
though they value the people, they value helping solving true real world problems for both the consumer and the operator. I think technologists get enamored with bells and whistles and buttons and payments and valuations and trying to grow it big enough that they can take their next exit to do that. Whereas the challenge that I find with former operators, yourself excluded from this, and there's a young lady that's making this shift right now, that was on the podcast. I really like her, and I think she's finally gotten to a point. This Shifty is the name of the company. Beth Hulsey, she's out of Michigan. Sweet, sweet, sweet lady. When she started this tech company, she was trying to solve a problem for her own issue, but she got buffaloed into, and I can go back to multiple products that have failed where they tried to solve this problem, but they didn't understand the innovation and the way that technology works. It's always going to take twice as long, and it's always going to be twice as expensive. I remember early on explaining to you, you have to get really, really clear about what you want as well. Unfortunately, operators are not very clear with their requirements. So understanding what those requirements are. So if they're willing to change their behavior to get better at their craft of running a technology company versus running a restaurant and invest in themselves, understand the changes that they need to make, I think they do a better job of it.
So it's interesting that you went to the technology side of it because, I actually thought the debate, or at least the debate I was having in my head, was very rarely in our industry is it the capabilities of the technology that's the problem. It's the operationalization of the technology. Because you could be a technology person and write up the perfect way to utilize this in your operation, but that's very different from a general manager, working a night shift.
Yeah. Well, I was having lunch with one of the co-founders of Kitchen Armor. They wrote Kitchen Hardware. Brent Sides, he and I had lunch
Yeah.
yesterday. We were talking yesterday, and he owned a restaurant for a year and a half. He's like, I had no idea, and he'd been in the technology sales world for a long time. Bought a restaurant, realized how hard it was to operate a restaurant, and realized that what he was selling may have been even hurting restaurants and what he was doing because he didn't quite understand what it was that they needed. So, I worked restaurants growing up. I get it. And I spent a lot of time with restaurant owners and operators because I want to understand what those pain points are. I probably spend 25% of my time at trade shows, maybe even more, not selling, but understanding what are the things that people are challenged with so that we can now go find solutions for them and develop them in conjunction.
I am married to this idea that it would not only be the greatest social media thing, but more importantly, might be the best thing for technology in the restaurant industry. And that is, we should have a single restaurant that all the tech companies get together, pitch in 10,000 apiece and open. And now you're all in the same place. You all need to find a way to work together, feel the pain, see what works, what doesn't work. I think it would just be this like cohesive thing. A, I just love to watch the chaos of it all. But
Yes.
B,
It's like
like
freaking it's like Restaurant Survivor, man.
it
Are
is.
you gonna get voted off the island every week?
Who would not tune into that reality show, right? A bunch of founders fighting over it's your technology or might, but like at the end of it, you would have to find a way to work together. And if we could just get things to work together, man, it would be better for operators.
Yep. And that's really one of the things that we had the premise to start with is it's again, I have the saying around the business. I never want to hear out of your mouth, it's not my job. I want you to understand it. If the customer's calling you, they're calling you for a problem. They think you can help them solve it.
Yeah, they
Even
think you
if
can
it's
go do
with another
inventory for them.
provider, even if it's with another provider, just had a coaching session before this with one of the people on our team where she's like, well, this is something that is a problem for some other service provider. I said, I don't care. I appreciate it that it's their problem. It's your job to go articulate that both to the client and to the provider, but only to the client that says, I'm going to call this other provider and show them where their problem is so that they can fix it so that the customer can be happy, not pointing fingers at saying, it's not my problem, it's their problem. Go fix it through them. Sorry,
Yeah.
I get passionate about this because it's like nobody in operations is calling their tech provider because they want to. They're calling because they've got a problem and you can help them solve
No, no, no. They're calling you because you're their partner
it.
and they trust you. And being a partner to somebody doesn't mean it's on you to solve everything. It's on you to open doors or give advice. That's what we want from partners. Too often we
Absolutely.
have service providers. It's a different relationship.
Yeah, no, and we pride ourselves on partnership, and again, a constant coaching with our team that just says there's no such thing as it's not my job. The ISP goes down. They want you to help them get their restaurants, internet back up and running, even if it's an AT&T or a Comcast problem. What is it that's going on because it's impacting my guest experience? Go fix it. You
Yeah.
work with them. If you got to get on a three-way call with Comcast to figure out how to reset the modem, then that's what you do.
I also think there's this byproduct of the more of those conversations you're in, the more you feel the customer's pain. You understand what their life is like, what their problems are. And that ultimately does flow through into the products that you create and, provide to them.
Absolutely. And again, we try and take our people out to the restaurants. Part of our training process is go walk through the kitchens, we have some restaurants in the past that let people work shifts on the help desk. I love it. I love letting them have to go work and see what it's like to work a Friday night and have, 14 takeout orders that haven't been bagged and put together while the line is completely full and you can't get another plate up there and you got to run food. Like that chaos is invigorating and scary all at the same time.
I've had this debate with people. It's also it's not productive in your way for your company in some ways, but it changes the attitude. Like Jimmy John's used to empty the corporate office once a year
Yep.
for Customer Appreciation Day, and everybody from IT to accounting went and worked the line. And I'm sure that it was not great productivity for the brand to have,
No,
your IT person
fortunately,
make a
they did it
sandwich.
on a Tuesday, not on a
Man, as a
Friday when I was busy.
franchisee, I was like, hell yeah, these guys understand it. And I do believe that it changes your attitude and your perspective of the world.
Absolutely. And again, you asked, do operators make great technologists? I think they make great support staff. I think they make great, they make better implementers because they understand what it looks like. The brands, I mean, In and Out does the exact same thing. I've got a lot of friends that worked at In and Out and still work at In and Out. They have Founders Day. BJ's does Founders Day, where the entire corporate office has to go work the line or go work the host stand or go work as a server. They jack stuff up left, right, and center, but they have a different level of empathy. And I can promise you, the technology, when the CIO can't ring up an order because the tablet is broken, he's going to go figure out how to go make it more reliable for that 18-year-old server that just started last week.
So, Jeremy, the reason I started this podcast is because, look, no one really knows what AI is. Nobody knows where it's going. And everybody has a different perspective on it given their experience. One of the things I wanted to talk with you about is, the evolution of POS and how somebody like you views what it will do to the industry. I was thinking about this ahead of time, and the example I found was Sun Microsystems. Like, they were like a $200 billion company that had all the hardware solutions that for all your major companies. We will
Mhm.
sell you your hardware. And AWS came along and said, we're going to go from being infrastructure hardware to a commodity. We're going to sell you cloud based servers. And literally, you fast forward a decade, I think they sold Oracle for like $9 billion, right? It was like a 96% loss of their market cap. We've watched the same transition happen with POSs, going from infrastructure to basically transactions. When you look at AI coming in, do you say as an industry, you guys are here to take orders and generate, that data and that AI doesn't even really play in that world? Or do you say this is the next cloud system that's, the next equivalent of, cloud-based infrastructure coming in and is fundamentally going to change the economics of, the POS landscape?
I have long believed that your POS is going to be in your pocket. I have
Interesting.
long believed that your POS is going to, and I have an episode probably 5 years ago where I talked about POS is really going to be in your pocket.
Paint me the vision.
And and so to me, it's your phone that is going to be your ordering mechanism for 90+% of the transactions.
I mean,
And
hell,
so
I
in
have
my
to imagine my iPhone today is probably more powerful than my full-on legacy system from 25 years ago that's probably still being used.
Absolutely. And again, I just recently downloaded Whisperflow as a AI tool. It's an AI voice, so it's not using the Mac AI. Or it's not using the Mac or the Windows voice dictation. It's using AI to be able to understand my voice and what did I say. And when I go in and correct Matt Wampler, that I actually text somebody your name and it misspelled your name, and then I retyped in your name properly, it fixed it and now learned that that's how next time I use your name, it's going to spell it properly, saving me time and energy. I don't even know what to do when I have to go type a long email anymore. That is going to be the way that people are going to. So, how is AI going to? You're going to have personalized, no different than Amazon. You're going to have personalized experiences, and you're going to be able to say, hey, send me some toilet paper. Send me the burrito that I normally order on Tuesdays. It's Taco Tuesday. My wife and I are going out. Can you make sure that it's ready for me at 6:30 when we get there? Make sure her margarita is cold, on the rocks with salt. That's what I
We're
think is going to happen. And I think AI is going to personalize your experience to you from loyalty to, and I think the POS is really just going to be the system of record that's going to be able to receive that input from a kiosk, from a phone, from the cloud, from Alexa, from your car, from any of those platforms. Because wherever you're going to be, you're going to order food, but the POS is really just going to be the engine that's going to translate that for system of record, for taxation, for theft, for loss prevention, all of those kind of things in the store.
But Jeremy, I mean, that's a scary reality for a CBS North Star, right? That in that reality, if I can do AI order taking, I don't want to compete with, OpenAI and Google as the interface. And if we're really just talking about the data they generate, well, these companies are the AWSs of the world are great at, storing and maintaining records. Where does a CBS fit in 10 or 15 years?
It really comes back down, Matt, to how we Square, awesome company, very, very, very large market cap, actually bigger than Toast. If you look at Square's market cap, it's bigger than Toast, and it's been bigger than Toast by 2 to 3x.
They do more than just restaurants, though.
They do, they do, but they have not been able to really break into restaurants. That's your point, because they've been everything to everyone. They're not customized to who it is that they're trying to serve. And so I'm going to say the riches are in the niches. It's going to be niching down to solving true problems for customers that are looking to innovate. California Fish Grill has been a customer of ours for a long time. They're in California primarily. It finally hit Maryland and Arizona. They started with 4 POS devices. They're now down to 1 POS device and 4 kiosks because that's what they needed to do for their business model based on California's labor laws and some of those kind of things. Totally fine. Why are they still partnering with us? Because we're still the connection to Restaurant 365. We're still the connection to their app that's produced by Olo. We're still the connection to their kiosk manufacturer, kiosk provider, Bytes. We're still the connection to all of those different players. Does it put us at risk where Olo could come in and just, rip and replace? They tried it. They tried it at Shake Shack. It didn't succeed a number of years ago. And again, I love Noah and I love what they've done. But in general, I think people solve certain problems for certain people. And part of where some of the people are struggling is they're trying to go too broad and too wide and trying to do everything for everybody. And I think at the end of the day, even some of the pushback from Toast, and I'm not picking on Toast because they've done a great job in certain areas. There's a lot of people that are like, you know what, I can't get what I need from Toast. And they're either going to unbundle or they're going to go away from it.
I want to go back to Square because I actually think Square is the right analogy. If POS was infrastructure, servers, hardware 20 years ago, it has become payment transaction and order taking. Square was originally just a payment processing company,
Yep.
right? They're very representative of what POS has almost become today. I think you look at Toast. Toast is kind of a payment
They are
processing
a payment. They're a payment provider. When
and
20 years ago, we used to just refer payment providers and they would make their money. We'd make our money on POS and we were in a good spot.
yeah.
Um, and,
So
and now it's all tied into one.
so if today it's transactions and processing, are you looking at the future and what you're saying to me is it's aggregation? That's what POS is?
It is. It's all enabling the restaurant to enable the guest experience the way the guests want to experience the brand. That's what it is.
Then where does that leave the back of house system? Because in a lot of ways, they were aggregating a lot of different data into one place for you to visualize and play with it.
They were, and I think that AI is going to disrupt their world even more than it's going to disrupt the transaction engines in the store. I will give you a very real life example because again, this is how the 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 details of what happened in I was at a very multi-billion dollar company that services the grocery industry. And they said, "Oh, we're just going to do point of sale for restaurants." I said, "Okay, tell me more." And I'm sitting with their CTO and their head of product. And he's like, "Well," I said, "what's the lag time on ringing up an order?" And again, you've been super fast Jimmy John's guy, super fast order entry, got to get the sandwich done super quick.
Our goal was
He's
to get
like,
the sandwich back before they'd actually even paid.
"Yep, exactly." And so you think about that, and that's how fast does it have to be at the point of sale to be able to have that competition? He's like, "Well, it's like 100 milliseconds between button clicks." 100 milliseconds is infinite when you've got a line of 10 people at a lunch rush. And he's like, well, it's because in grocery, because that's what they service, you're scanning groceries, you're talking to the consumer, you're bagging groceries. It doesn't have to be very fast before it gets onto the transaction. Whereas in restaurants, they want it to be sub 2 milliseconds from button click to button click to button click. What is different with that? Square, and again, I'm not picking on Square, but they struggle when you get to super high volume places. Toast did originally too. And they had to rewrite some of their pieces because once you got to super high volume where you're bringing up 8, 10, $12 million a year, $1 million a month in transactions, that's a lot. You got to have a lot of really fast button clicks to be able to do that. And so I think there's going to be a broader appeal, and then I think there's going to be an in-store appeal for certain brands that's going to be different.
Okay, I can buy that future. I actually liked the future you just painted. My next pushback on it is this. Are they is the POS, and I'm saying this very generalized. I don't know, one of those. They haven't played well with others. They haven't tended to open up their data. They've tended to bridge things off. They have been the exact opposite of aggregators. The fact that Chally exists, and those order aggregators from third-party delivery is a testament to how poorly they've done. So can they even, whether they should become the order aggregation layer in the future, are they suited to it? Is that something they can even do?
I, you asked my philosophy and what we do differently. We are that player. We try and do exactly that. And so, we're not trying to be like everybody else. We're
I got
not trying to be like NCR. We're not trying to be like Toast, where it's a walled garden and you only get to play if one, you pay, and two, you play by my set of rules. I recognize why they do that. I recognize why they have to do that. I also don't believe that it is necessary. I think it's something that you can design it differently and be more open to doing that. I mean, we've got over 150 integrations to our platform currently, and every day we're working on new ones because it's solving customers' problems. And is it antithetical to what the board or what the investors might say we need to do? Probably, but I don't really give a crap because I think that that's the right way to go about it. And maybe I'm going to be proven right, or maybe I'm going to be proven wrong, but that's philosophically who we are.
I can't help but think that this conversation feels almost identical to the conversation you had 20 years ago about whether or not we should be the single system of record and take on the back of house as well. It sounds great on paper. Like I love it. Paint me the case for why it doesn't happen. Why don't we have our
Because
back of house and our POS matched up today? It just didn't happen. It would have been great. Why won't the POS end up being the aggregator?
why won't it?
Yeah,
Because
give me
the
the
people are
opposite
not going to,
case.
because people aren't going to play nice with each other, and people are going to solve it by going and finding an omnivore, going and finding a Chally, going and finding a Deliverect to solve this problem for them. They're going to reverse engineer and backdoor some of these systems to essentially, I don't say screw people, but essentially do what they need to do to solve the customer's challenges.
I had Tim.
Why do I think it's going to be something that we're going to succeed? I think is long term. I think open wins. Long term, I think
Yeah,
not locking people into one size fits all, and you can have every color as long as it's black. Henry Ford's famous quote from the 1900s. I don't think it's that way. And again, I think that customers, and especially Americans, they want the freedom to choose. They don't want to be told how they need to run their restaurant. And
well,
unfortunately, the more it gets commoditized, the easier it gets for them to be able to throw their weight around.
my really idealistic view of this, and is bad for all of us that are on this call, but great for the restaurant. Tim Martin I just had on. I love Tim Martin and his story. Single unit, just open. He's been in the industry for 20 years. He's treating AI as his, first employee in some ways. Onboards it, keeps it up to date. He's using Olo on Rails and, is vibe coded kind of a simple back of house and is leveraging AI for all these things. And I love it for two reasons. One, every restaurant truly is different. Every pizza
Yep,
place is different. Their operations are different. They all have different needs. So one of the reasons we have such a fragmented tech stack is there are so many different ways you can run a restaurant that you would want a different combination. So my idealistic world is, well, if you can get to the point where you're able to use a Olo or a CBS as an aggregator, I can just have AI build me my own system the way I want it to be.
I would
How
agree.
long before Google says, like, look, we'll do your back of house records. Like, we can have it vibe coded and give it away for free on Gmail.
And quite honestly, they tried. They tried to do order insertion. They tried to do online ordering, and they realized the complexity of restaurants is hard.
Why?
Again,
Why? Where's
why
this
is that hard?
complexity?
Um, think about a pizza place.
Okay.
Think about a pizza place. How does your local pizza place charge for a half and half pizza? Half
Great
and half
question.
specialty pizza. Do they charge the most expensive half, the least expensive half? Do they charge half the price of pepperoni, or do they charge the full price of pepperoni? So pepperoni is $2 to add to a medium pizza. Do they? If I only put pepperoni in half of it, do I get charged $1? Or do I get charged $2?
Well,
Do I
not to get
tax
too
on that? Do I not tax on that?
yeah, not to get too philosophic, but part of it is, does the restaurant want to make those decisions, or do they want someone to come in and say, we've already kind of made these decisions for you and have set it up in a certain way? I don't know the answer to that. Which one do the restaurants want that
They
control?
do. They want that control, and they people get pissed off when they don't get what they are used to. You've got some barbecue restaurants. I order a half pound of brisket, right? How do I charge for a half pound of brisket when I know that I have to weigh it by weights and measures to be legal? Is it 0.48 pounds or is it 0.51 pounds? They always go to the higher side. So I'm going to do 0.51, 0.52, 0.53. How much do I do that to be able to charge them for something like that? These are the challenges that restaurants face that Google and Amazon have so many other better ways to solve, so many other better ways to invest their capital than to go after the super fragmented market that has so many different. Why do they go after retail? I mean, Amazon's trying to do the grocery thing. They have succeeded in certain ways and they fail in other ways, trying to do the grocery Amazon Fresh, right? They went and bought Whole Foods to try and figure out how to do some of it. And they still can't figure out how to make that a meaningful part of their stack of revenue. Do they have enough capital to be able to go do it? Yes. Is it so much harder to do that? I'll give you a stupid example. In California, if I have a Jimmy John's sub and it's completely cold and I'm taking it for to go, I don't tax it because it's a grocery item. But the minute I toast that sub, it's taxed and the entire rest of the transaction is taxed. If I'm dining in, the whole thing is always taxed. How did they get to that stupid level of detail that we have to manage for a toasted versus untoasted sub for dine in versus takeout at that level?
Well, again, this is where I kind of go back to the AI argument. When they change a law in California, and I've got 15 different tech vendors, that are monitoring 15 different countries and 50 different states, it's hard for them to react as a tech vendor. Whereas if I was a true AI system that was built around me, my AI would say, like, hey, by the way, here are things that affected you today. They just changed the way they tax, blah, blah, blah. Would you like us to update the way you do your pricing? Like, I could see a world actually where you're now more flexible, more informed, and can change quicker than having to rely on the vendor.
I agree, but I would ask you why did you reply to me for today's podcast versus your AI to make sure that we were on for today?
Who said that my AI didn't respond?
I know you better than that. And I'm teasing you, but this is, I think, as humans, it will get there. But I think at some point, the AI will become that transaction engine that is the business rules. It's all about the business rules that are at the center of the business. And I think these big tech vendors, the niche things that we do, it's so hard to figure it out and monetize it in a way that people are willing to pay for.
By the way, I totally agree with you. I'm being devil's advocate on this. We
I know.
sit here and say, like, time series forecasting. Well, it's a niche, and then time series forecasting in restaurants is a niche. And why isn't somebody going to come get you? It's like, well, who wants to spend the man hours of figuring out how we're going to identify when somebody ran out of product and didn't 86 it, and the data needs to be backfilled, and the power went out at this time, and like, there's all these niche cases that it's a lot of institutional knowledge that gets
Yep.
put into the product that you get as a byproduct.
And I'm sure when you were a Jimmy John's franchisee, they told you, here's your labor metrics, and you trusted it 80%.
Jimmy John's, I think back in the day, they were fighting the whole joint employer side of things. So it was, hey, your labor's high. You should probably do something about that. We're
No.
not going to tell
But
you who to hire and what to pay.
But like even in that case, we built an AI product, a machine learning product for kitchen timing called Kitchen AI that gives you predictive analytics as to when your items can be produced.
Yeah.
And we then put it into a customer and they argued with us. Come to find out, they had the data wrong because they essentially threw out all of the use cases for anything that was over 20 minutes in their kitchen. So like nothing can take over 20 minutes. Then statistically, we proved that they were taking more than 20 minutes on certain checks. And once we did that, they were able to solve it. But at first, they didn't believe the data. You know that. How many times have you put your solution in somewhere and they're like, there's no way that's right? But then you
Most of the time.
statistically can prove all
Or
the time, almost every time.
we're not even comfortable with the numbers you're getting. They're too close. Can you just add a couple to it just to make
It,
us feel better?
yeah. And that's exactly the reason. But those hand-to-hand combat items are way too much work for Amazon or
I would
for
agree with that.
Microsoft or for OpenAI or for Google, in my opinion.
All right. So I got two last things I wanted to talk with you about. I'll start on the kind of fun one. What about blockchain? This was a thing. Crypto has been in, it's out. You guys are at the heart of financial transactions. Is it even a conversation that is being had today on your end? Is it something that is gonna be around in the future? Or, how do you view that?
Um, the conversation is more wrapped around the alternate payment methods than it is about blockchain or any of those
What
kind
do
of
you mean by
solutions.
alternative payment methods?
Venmo, PayPal, WePay, Alipay, international payment methods like like some of those, text to pay, not using the U.S. banking system, and Venmo. I mean, Venmo is the amount of money that people keep in their Venmo accounts is pretty ridiculous. They technically are a bank because of it, and getting access to that. I've got siblings that are 16 years younger than me. So they're in their early 30s, and they use Venmo for more transactions, definitely person to person. And if they could use Venmo in the stores, they'd prefer that over using their Wells Fargo debit card or their Chase, uh, uh, credit card. So less about blockchain and that, and more about the alternate forms of payment, especially in some of the highly, youth areas, as well as some of the international areas where there's high international population. They're looking for Alipay or WePay or, some of those kind of things. So less so the blockchain and um, more so the alternate forms of payment.
And I would assume some of those alternative forms of payment might end up using the blockchain and different
Yes,
currencies, and then
they
you're not
absolutely
even
do.
have to deal with it.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. But we interface to them and just allow people to do that transaction.
Yeah.
Why is it not getting adopted by those that are monetizing their point of sale through credit cards? Because you can't monetize Venmo the same way you can Visa and Mastercard. The way the Square or Toast does.
So you said something earlier, and that was technology in need of a problem versus solving a real business need. How do we solve real problems in the restaurants? And those problems tend to be they've been similar for a long time. One of the concepts that I'm kind of fascinated with is at what point do we remake our operations around new technology? Like, I sit here and say, we do demand forecasting. So we can predict what you're going to do in advance. And when we go sit down with the operators, you realize how ingrained, look at barbecue. We always make too much brisket, but then it goes into the beans, and then we do this with the other thing. Like they built all these systems around it because it was a problem. And now
Hmm.
we can go in and make that better, but they're not quite redoing their operations to say, well, if we know exactly what we're going to sell 4 days from now, let's marinate this thing for 4 days and use a shorter shelf life product. When do we start to see, or maybe we do already start to see how restaurants are changing their operations around technology? But, do you see that happening anytime soon?
It happens every day because consumers force it. You look at even redesigns when McDonald's went to, or Shake Shack as an example I brought up earlier. Shake Shack didn't ever used to have a takeout area. There's a guy that you and I both know or seen, Yarrow, is creating the pick pad solution. He's got the solution out there because more and more people are coming in to pick up food, and they're picking up the wrong food. And so they're having to change it based on the consumer of what they're doing. I love to talk about this. I read this article a couple of years ago from the CEO of Chili's. Everybody's enamored with where Chili's has gone the last couple of years. They've remade, but they invested in a double-sided grill to cook their cheeseburgers. So a cheeseburger used to take 12 minutes to cook or whatever. Now, because they've got a grill on the top and a grill on the bottom, they can get the same crispiness without having to flip the burger. They invested in technology in the kitchen to be able to produce that burger, which is why they could do the 3 for me as cheap as they did, because they don't have as much grill space to be able to produce that burger as fast. So I think it comes back down to what problem are they trying to solve? And if they're invested enough, there's likely going to be somebody out there willing to build it, or there's something already out there you just haven't looked for.
When we're like, let's say, I think everyone can agree that at some point we're going to have fully roboticized kitchens. I
Yep.
don't know whether it's going to be
Working with a
five
brand
years.
right now that's talking about doing something exactly like that that has no human in the store if they don't need it.
There will need to be an operating system that runs that robotic kitchen. Will the POS be part of that, or will it just be, again, an aggregator? Who owns the intelligence of robotic kitchens?
I think it's a hybrid. I think the point of sale is still going to be the transaction engine that's going to interface to the the pieces that are doing that. I think the robotics themselves, it's going to still serve up the data that says how many wings do I need to have ready to go. Predictive analytics to be able to say in the 11 to 11:15 hour, we're going to serve X amount of wings. You have to go pull that data for your solution to be able to do that, to be able to get the robot to drop wings so that you can serve the wings the speed that you need to be able to serve them to meet the guest experience. I think the restaurant POS system is going to be that aggregator. And I think the robot is going to read from that system or a system like yours to be able to know how many wings does it need to have? How many fries does
You're
it
the
need to have before?
gasoline fueling the car. You're the
Yep,
oil lubricating the gears. It needs that flow through. Um,
absolutely.
Before we wrap up, you've gotten to see so many unique journeys of people that you interviewed on your podcast 10 years ago, and are off building billion-dollar companies. I'm sure you've seen more than that, and failures that sputtered out. What advice do you have for companies looking to come into the restaurant industry? What learnings do you have about being successful?
Stay close to the problem. Stay close to the problem. Who is the problem? And I'm saying stay close to what it is that you're trying to solve for. Don't try and be everything to everyone. Understand what it is that you do and you do well. Be close enough to the problem to understand and pivot because you can go broad after you've gone deep, but go an inch wide and a mile deep with these brands to try and solve real problems. And then you can broaden your product offering as time goes on, would be my suggestion to you.
Jeremy, it's been an honor having you on. You make not only a great host, but an incredible guest.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
It,
I know we had to reschedule this once or twice, but it's great to sit on the side of the mic and at least pontificate on what I believe the world of restaurant technology needs to look like now and in the future.
I love the order aggregation side. I hadn't thought about it. It actually makes a lot of sense. I think I probably hadn't thought about it purely just because how defensive POSs have historically been and how not friendly and open they are.
Yeah, we try and break that mold, and hopefully the rest of the world, outside of all the other fun stuff that we're doing, like our big tipper meals and some of those other things, dude. At the end of the day, we're just trying to make the world a better place, one POS system at a time.
Well, with for anybody who's interested in CBS, North Star, and wants to get a hold of you or find the podcast, what's the best place for people to find you?
Very, very active on LinkedIn. So Jeremy Julian on LinkedIn. I know there's probably two or three out there, but you're going to see that I post crap about restaurant tech all the time. Restauranttechnologyguys.com and cbsnorthstar.com are the two websites. Lots of different ways to interact. If you are a restaurant technologist or a restaurant operator and want to be on the show, there's a Be Our Guest on the restauranttechnologyguys.com. Click the little link and it'll send me an email. It goes to me directly. I do not have an AI filtering that. I respond to everyone, even if it's not the right fit. But I'd love to see what you're building, whether it's restaurant or restaurant tech, to be able to share your story with the world.
And outside of myself, who is the best guest that you've ever had on?
The best guest.
Most fun, most interesting. I'll let you define it.
I I really loved. So you probably know who Christopher Siebes is.
Yeah,
One of he was a lot of
Xenio.
fun. He was Expiant before that, and he was just his story wove so many different directions. He was a lot of fun. It's the only guy that's drank wine on the podcast while we're recording. He
You
didn't
know,
realize it was on video.
his wife is like a PhD in like behavioral psychology of hospitality. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, he and I tease him that he married up for sure,
he
and he was a
definitely
competitor for many many years, but now he's become a dear friend, and I've had him on the show. He was a lot of fun. Um, I always enjoy founders that are like scaling. I mean, I've had Noah on the show. I've had Noah from Olo. He was fun to kind of get. I know who else was a lot of fun. Was Sterling Douglas. You
Sterling's
brought
great.
up. You brought up. He was fun because he he didn't know what he didn't know in the beginning. And so going back to some of those episodes and listening, it's kind of fun to be like, oh, this is what you're trying to solve for. And now he's truly doing it. I ran into him recently at a show and I was like, hey, remember when you're on the show? You should go back and listen to how dumb we both sounded. And we kind of chuckle about it, but it's good.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to looking back at the shows I've done in the past. The
Yeah,
downside of
I'll go
doing
get
live,
I'll go get I'll go clip your original episode up into like little 30-second clips and go put them out on the internet for you.
it's funny. Before I did your episode, I think it was like the first podcast I'd done, we were so frightened that everyone was going to steal our idea. We didn't realize how hard it was to do. So like at that time, it was like, we can't say too much. I remember having a big briefing with Osa ahead of time. It was like, you can't get into any
I
specifics.
remember you were like, no, I can't tell you the details. I'm like,
Like
dude,
I literally stayed super high level because I listened to it maybe a year ago, and it was like I didn't really say much. Like it was
I kept asking questions, trying to get you to spill the beans, and you're like, nope, 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 nope,
nope.
nope. This is what we're
That
trying
was
to
the
solve
most
for.
offensive I've ever been on a podcast.
Well, I appreciate you. At least. I mean, honestly, Matt, I say this wholeheartedly. I appreciate that you brought this out because you're bringing out some really cool conversations that I have not had with different people, and it's fun to sit and listen and watch all your guys' success. And I'm a big
Honestly,
fan of you and your co-founder. Osa's a really really cool dude as well.
Guests like you make it really easy. Let's just put it that way. I've been
I
blessed to
appreciate
have
that, man.
wonderful people to talk to. Well, Jeremy,
Awesome,
thank you for coming on. This was a blast.
awesome. Thanks, brother.